so much back, I think I'm never running out, yeah. Bust me down a whip, bitch, I don't do.
All right, please welcome in Mr. J. DeMerit. I mean, I am absolutely starstruck sitting here right now. I feel like I know you just because I've watched so much about you. I feel like I know everything about you, but it's just crazy to be sitting here with you right now. So thank you very, very much for coming on. And no, you
Oh,
go ahead.
yeah, no, all good. It's my pleasure. Again, it's always nice to come on and support the beautiful game and to support people like yourself.
Well, thank you. And you said right before we started, you talked about growing the community and stuff. And that was one of my first questions is you were surprisingly accessible. And I was actually talking with my friends a few weeks ago and he was like, how do you talk to all these professional athletes? I was like, it's crazy. Like all you have to do is really, truly just send them a message. And now like I've had people who play in low leagues of England not even respond or just leave me on red or something. But you are a legend of the American game. Why do you make yourself so accessible to the community?
Well, part of the reason is I'm built from it. I growing up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, having Packers players riding my bike around, growing up in a town that has as many people, in the stadium as there are in the whole place. It was such a unique place for me to grow up. And I think, again, serendipitously, I think all of these things matter. And, I'm a kid that grew up in Green Bay, had Brett Favre riding my bike. But what's the difference? You know what I mean? I'm someone that understands that community is key, especially in this sport that we love. The not just American football, but the football we're talking about now is like, stories are there, people are there, but at the end of the day, if you don't tell them, if you don't share those stories, then it's just your own experience. And I've been so fortunate to have such an incredible experience. And the game has gifted me with so many things that, I love telling these stories. I love sitting on podcasts with someone like yourself that, is interested in how this all works. And that's part of my job, in my opinion. That's why I am so accessible, because I believe this story should be told.
Thank you for saying that, because this is my 8th episode. And the reason I started this is because I want to bring stories to media that don't make it in the mainstream media. And you have a documentary, you've been on a million things, but I'm hoping I can get a few stories out of you that have never been told or just aren't as popular, and I'm not the first person to start a podcast in soccer. I mean, I know that, but my goal is to work hard to become the best. And I felt like in my first few episodes, I just stuck to a pretty boring format where I just went, tell me about this stop. But I'm hoping that this will be I'm hoping I can get a lot of good stuff out of you. And I'm really very excited for this because I love stories and love hearing stories from awesome people. So just want to thank you again for coming on. So
nope.
I just finished your documentary this morning, actually. And I was pretty young when it came out. So I'm gonna be honest, I didn't watch it because I wasn't really involved in soccer when I was a kid, but it was the most inspiring thing I've ever watched. And I'm not just saying that because you're sitting here right in front of me, but I'm 18 and all I want to do is play pro, but I've given up on it so many times. And I sat there and watched, I was like, I got to give it another try. Like I'm going to go for it. But it also inspired me to work so much harder in this as well. Like that really and truly was such a good put together film.
Well, and that's how it started, like that was really the catalyst of all of this. Who I am, what I do now at Rise and Shine is all around Rise and Shine, the J. DeMerit story. The Kickstarter project in 2011, that was the largest independently funded film in Kickstarter history at the time.
Wow.
$250,000 was raised by the general public, by that amazing, passionate community of soccer that we're talking about. When you have thousands of people that you don't even know that are donating money to tell your story because they think it's important to share with the world, like, it is empowering. It is for me almost a purpose-built thing where, when that happened, when I had this documentary all of a sudden come into the light and I got to be the vehicle or the voice or the face of this kind of whole concept. And again, thank you for saying that it inspired you, because that's the point. You know what I mean? Rise and Shine isn't just a soccer story. Rise and Shine is a life story. It's a mentality. It's a how do you take on the world and share the world with your gifts and take it upon yourself to create your own story. I'm a perfect example, and that's why Rise and Shine was made into the film. Is a perfect example of somebody that took their life in their own hands. I didn't At 23 years old, I was a graduate with a university degree in my pocket and no chance in soccer. You know, I was 23. Yes, I had a degree. No, I didn't get drafted into the MLS, but I knew I had something inside of me and a leadership capability within inside of me that presented the opportunities that led me to England. And, you know, that England gave me my future and took a renegade American under their wing and taught me about the game. And, you know, and so these types of things for me are mine. And that's the beautiful thing about stories and your own personal journey. And that has to be the focus, you know, whether you make it pro or not is regardless, because I believe we're all put on this earth to do something. And if we don't find it, if relentlessly trying to find what that is, you know, really unearth who we are as people, you know, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. And so that's what Rise and Shine is all about. It's about taking your life in your own hands, dreaming big and thinking small.
Well, I love that you said that, because even if I don't make it pro, which, I mean, I always say that's any soccer player's dream, is I found that I really, really love doing this. And I was thinking, I was like, I got to put everything into this just to like become the best. And all the things that you were saying about, I mean, you did the impossible. And I was like, you know what? I think I just get a little bit of DeMerit's pursuit, or I can't think of the right word, but I think I can make something out of it. And it was just anything, like, and it doesn't matter if it's sport or anything, if you put that kind of mindset, I think if you could then get it done. And that's why I thought it was such an amazing watch. And I was telling my girlfriend, but I was like, he moved to England with no money. And she was like, wow.
Well, I was talking to my buddy. He's a lawyer here in Vancouver, where I live now. And he always tells people, like, when he introduces me to his friends, he's like, and he moved to England and slept on the floor for almost a year. He's like, when's the last time you met a person that's willing to sleep on the ground for what they want? You know what I mean? And again, it's that simple. And again, for me, it wasn't even a big deal. It was like, I got a mattress on the floor in somebody's, attic in London. Cool. I got a place to stay. You know, that's a great place to start. You know what I mean? Like, we have to be humble in our approach too, especially if you want to do it the hard way, which 99% of us have to do. You know, like, I think we always forget the stats, you know, like 1% make it, you know what I mean? Like that's a staggering amount of stats. Crazy. But at the end of the day, you know, are you willing to sleep on the floor for what you love? You know, and for me, that's what it was. I saw something in myself again, like, and I wasn't doing it with like an ego approach. It was a humble approach of like, okay, I got to be one of the best college soccer players in America at 23. I was an honorable mention All-American and Division I athlete. Mm-hmm. That's a good thing. But again, numbers told me I didn't get drafted. So what do? You know, for me, it was looking at opportunities, making sure I was doing the right things that were in front of me. Because again, life, we all live in different places. We're all different people. And so therefore we will all create different opportunities for ourselves. And I think that for me was the focus. You know, I came into that gray area of like, oh, should I play? Should I not? Should I just go be a designer and do something else? But at the end of the day, I had this burning thing inside of me, and I had an opportunity to go to England and live on my friend's attic for free, regardless of the circumstances. Who cares? I had an opportunity to do something different and to take my life in my own hands. And, you know, again, that's what I always encourage young people to do.
Well, I look at Airbnbs and it's like, come sleep in this extra person room. I was like, I can't do that. And then I watch you and you freaking slept in these random places. I'm like, I don't understand how he did that. But I want to start getting into your career, because I mean, just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But do you think that the crap that you went through made you the gritty player and the hardworking player that you were? I mean, obviously it did, but like, in your opinion? I
do. I think adversity is the greatest character builder you can ever have, you know, and I believe that adversity is 100%. There isn't a person in the world that won't face adversity, you know, whatever that is. Your mom might die. You might get injured. You might break your knee. You might, break up with your girlfriend. There's a million adversities out there that are going to take our minds into other places that are going to be traumatic. And so within that, if you accept those things, if you're almost prepared for them, you know, like I didn't move to England and do these crazy things without thinking that it wasn't going to work. Of course, I thought that it might not work, but I also was crazy enough to think that it might work. And I think, you know, I think that's the focus. It's like this whole idea of like where we sit in our belief systems. Do we want to push through those belief systems and make them ours? Or do we just want to believe everyone else and tell them that I'm not good enough? And these are the types of things that I think we all struggle with at all times in life. I still do the same thing, even now in my new career as like an entrepreneur and doing all these other projects. It's like, I find myself in those breakthrough moments a lot still. It's like, do I want to have the balls to break through this and go through the adversity and the tough stuff that's going to come with it? Because I believe that these things can happen. And more times than not, it's for me, it's a yes. And so I think that's where I live. I just live in that moment where, like, if I'm not breaking my comfort zones, then I know I'm not growing. And we know that adversity is the greatest form of growth.
Well, I go out and practice sometimes by myself, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, one, this kid, I didn't get a D1 college offer, and I'm like, well, I failed this tryout, but watching you and the stuff you went through, it's given me such a different perspective. So I can't wait till the next time I go out and practice, and I'm like, you know what, I have a little bit less to worry about. I think I can do this. So trailblazer. So thank you very much for providing your story with that. Because it's just like, one big adversity is always just getting down on yourself, and I've always done that. But the fact that you went through all the things you did, and you came from nowhere and played on the biggest stage, is insane. Which, one thing I thought, what I want to ask you is one big thing that your family talked about, and you talked about in your documentary, was that the Premier League was the biggest stage. What, in your opinion, makes the Premier League the biggest stage? Like, why is English football the best?
I think it's a good question, and I'll tell you the reason why I think it is. It's because I always tell people that are like from the States, like that are like, oh, what's it like over there? And I was like, and usually they're like my friends from Wisconsin or from Green Bay, they're like Packers fans. And I'm like, okay, but let me tell you one little scenario about what it's like to be an English soccer player, right? So imagine if the NFL was in Wisconsin, all of them. Imagine if all the teams in the NFL were in Wisconsin. There were 2 Lambeau Fields in Green Bay. One was green and the other one was yellow. Then in Milwaukee and Madison, there was 2 of each of those stadiums. And within the whole state, there was 96 professional teams, all up and down, relegation, promotion every year. So this roller coaster keeps turning, right? And now imagine if you were from any little part of Wisconsin and you had your own team in your own town, and then you could grow to these big clubs too. And so that's what it's like over there, like it's in a place that's, you can go from the top of Newcastle, the north of England, down to the bottom of England and Brighton in almost 5 hours, right? Like, think about that on a landmass scale alone, just to have 96 professional teams within a 5-hour radius of driving, like people in America can't even fathom that. It just doesn't exist in our world. And so that's the most interesting thing, and for me, and how I explain it to people that don't really understand. It's like, 96 professional team in a place you can drive 5 hours to, and then you're in the same town and you're wearing a different color, and you despise those people. You fight them in the streets, the same streets that you live in. And so that's what makes English football, to me, the most important and the most watched and the most intense, because it is so concentrated in such a small place, and it's so passionate. And again, it's where the culture of the game started. And again, it taught me the culture of the game, and I have such an appreciation for English football.
Well, LA and New York both have 2 teams in it, and I look and they're thinking about putting a third one in any sport, and I'm like, why? Like, you're not gonna be able to fit it there. And then, like, you go on, like, Copa 90 will post a map of all the teams in England. I'm like, how does this work? I'm like, it just blows my mind that there can be, like 10 teams and just in London or more.
I think there's even more now. Yeah, there's even more. If you go all through the 4th division, it's like, and again, and I imagine me as a 23-year-old American who hadn't seen anything like this. And then I landed there and I'm roaming around, and I went to my first game was QPR Tranmere in the 2nd division in London at Loftus Road, QPR Stadium. And I walked in there, and it's a 20,000 seat stadium, just stacked on it, old school, like really, really close to the field. And like, you can almost touch the dude throwing the ball in. So it's like, all of a sudden, 93 minutes, the wave of the crowd is going, it doesn't stop there. And again, it's so great to see, teams in America, North America, here in the MLS, finally adopting that culture, the noise culture, I call it. Like, you make noise for 93 minutes. If you don't want to do that, then don't come to the stadium. And that's culture, right? So like, it's so cool for me to learn the culture where it really started. And then now to bring that culture here to North America and to be a part of it here is really special to see after all these years. Yeah.
What teams in the MLS do you, in your opinion, are the front runners in having the best noise culture and crowd? For me, in my opinion, just from a spectator, I watched an Austin game the other day, and I was like, holy crap, they got some good fans. And I've been to a few Atlanta games, and well, back when they had Miguel Marone and people like that, when their first few years, and the crowds were outstanding. But in your opinion, because I've never been out west, I've never seen some of these other teams, but in your opinion, who are some of the best fan bases in the MLS?
Well, I think LAFC is coming up now. You always need that little bit of Hollywood, and I think LAFC has kind of surpassed the Galaxy as far as the show-stopping LA team. Seattle, I think, again, this whole Pacific Northwest culture, Seattle, Vancouver, Portland, I think is a nice little hub of the core values of where US and North American soccer was built. So I think that's a fun little rivalry to be a part of, which I was. Yeah. I think, again, Austin has come into the league and really shown, how fans can start from the beginning. I'm good friends with Carlos Bocanegra at Atlanta. So I've watched him, they have just sheer numbers. Not only do they share a massive stadium with the Falcons, so they have a great place to play, but you got 5 million people that live downtown Atlanta, filling that to 71 in their first year, breaking all MLS records and only their first. Yeah, it's impressive. And at the end of the day, it's like, then what? You get the people in the stadium. Now you got to create that culture. And again, that's where our sport is built from. Our sport is built in the terraces of the culture, in my opinion. It's not the players on the field. It's the culture in the stands. And I think that the teams that have gotten it right in North America are the teams that are succeeding, because that's what England taught me. Your season ticket is being bought every year, not because of the wins and losses or the league that you're in. It's about what you do on a Saturday, because that's culture. That's the cultural piece of what this game delivers. And I think that, America is just starting to figure that out.
Well, I know Charlotte just beat the record. I think it was their opening game, but I was at the Atlanta game where they set the record. And I've never felt an energy like that, which I've never been to England or anything, unfortunately. But the energy was just insane. But the one crazy thing to realize is that that people can go, but the team has been around for 2 years. But teams in England have been around since the 1800s, early 1900s. The culture there is insane. Which one thing I actually wanted to ask you about was in your documentary. I think it was your mom. She said that when you scored the goal in the playoff final, that everyone was going crazy, and she was like, well, this is for my son. What did you think that when you were sitting there and it was like 70,000 people were going crazy over something you did? Like, what was that feeling like?
Well, I blacked out first,
I can't remember any of my moments from my career.
When that corner kick came in, again, I was locked in on that ball. Ashley Young, he just signed another contract with Aston Villa this week. Like, the guy's still playing. Incredible man. He's still delivering some of the greatest balls, on set pieces still to this day for England, in England. And I was locked in on that ball, and I remember hitting it off my head and hearing this crowd, and then I don't remember. I kind of blacked out. They say in those big moments, I kind of black out. And the next thing I remember, I was at the top of the box with all the guys in a huddle screaming, and Marlon King, our forward, was grabbing me in the face like this. And so that 4-second block between scoring, celebrating, and then my face grab, I have no idea what happened. but again, we were such a well-oiled machine as a team. Our manager, Eddie Boothroyd at the time, big Leeds is who we played in that game. So everyone thought Leeds was going to crush us in that final. And again, this Millennium Field in Cardiff, 72,000 people. And you can't remake those kind of stories. It's just such an interesting sound. It's such an incredible moment. But again, we had such a team focus in that game. So once we scored, we had a plan. And so I remember thinking that right after he took his hands off my face, was like, oh shit, okay, we got a plan. What's the plan? Okay, well, I'm a defender, so I better get back there and start defending, because my goal today was to keep a clean sheet. Getting a goal was a bonus. And eventually getting man of the match in that game was a bonus. Because when I walked out on that field, I had one thing to do, and that's to keep a clean sheet, because that was my job. And as a team, we all had this collective unity, and we all had this collective idea of what we all were bringing as individuals to a great team effort. And you'll see the best teams, it's effortless, because all you do is what you're good at, and all you do is what your job is. And the best 11 just do their jobs. And, I've had 2 teams in my career that on those big moments just did their jobs. You know, our 2009, 2010 team, you know, when we beat Spain, you know, winning our group for the first time, that team, you know, we were a group of 25 guys that really just understood who we were as individuals, but then Bob knew as a collective which guys to put on that field. And, you know, those types of team performances, and the Millennium Stadium for Watford was the same. You know, we had 11 guys, you know, probably 15 again that played that just knew exactly what to do that day. They knew what they were good at. They knew what they brought to that field and to the collective. Yeah. And when you go out there and effortlessly, you know, when you go out there and put in that effort, it becomes almost effortless, because all you got to do is what you can control. And it's beautiful when everyone does that.
Mm-hmm. Which you mentioned the USA, and I will circle back to that because that is a huge thing, because you're the first person I've ever had on here that played internationally. So I have a lot of questions about that. But my first question is, I want to know how important really and truly is a clean sheet to a defender? Because obviously you're not the only one in the back, but to your standards, how high do you hold a clean sheet to yourself?
Well, I mean, again, when you're a professional player, you get, you know, forwards get goal bonuses and center backs get clean sheet bonuses. So for defenders, those are our goals. You know, if I keep a clean sheet, it's like me being a forward and scoring on a game. That's the way I look at it. I look at it as almost the polar opposite of, like, if I keep a clean sheet, I get a bonus because I just did my job. You know what I mean? If you get a goal, you get a goal bonus too. But at the end of the day, like, you know, that was always my focus. And when you're a defender, I think sometimes we get so caught up in the lights and all the other stuff that people care about. But at the end of the day, we're defenders, and we're the thankless people, the ones that get to, like, you know, kick the superstars and disrupt the rhythms of the best players of the game. And, you know, I always took that almost kind of personally. Like, I love that relationship. You know, I get to go and disrupt some of the best players in the world. I get to go and, you know, because Messi was, you know, the world tells you that the Messi is going to beat you, but then you have the capacity to go and test that on that day. And so for me as a defender, that was always my focus. Who do I get to test today? Which reputation do I get to crush? And if I get to crush that reputation, then I'm doing my job.
How did you gain that mentality to just want to ruin someone's day when you play against them? Like, what made you gain that? Because when you grow up and stuff, everyone just wants to be the attacker. Everyone wants to score goals and stuff. But where did you gain that perspective of, you want to make someone's day hell?
When again, I was like, you know, defensive mentality is it's the core of how all defenders, you know, like if you know, some defenders are out there because they wanted to be a forward and didn't make it, and then now they have to play D. Like, a good defender wants to be out there to be the disruptor. Defense starts as a mentality. And so for me, that was always it. It was like, okay, it started in college because, again, you know, famously, I got recruited out of high school. You know, again, I only had 2 colleges that even recruited me. And only one of them gave me a $2,000 a semester scholarship, which wasn't much. But I had to change positions my first year. I came in as a forward, you know, and then my first year at UIC in Chicago, my coach was like, well, we might redshirt you. We don't know if you're going to play up front. But he said, but we got an injury and a red card to the guys at the back. Have you ever played defender before? And, you know, defending was built through basketball. I was a basketball player through high school too. And so I was the guy that shut down the big forward, you know, the Michael Jordans of their team. I just go mark them out. And so it's amazing how that transfers into the soccer box. It's the same. The box is just a little bit bigger. You got to box out. You got to have a man. You got to be able to grab him without grabbing him. You got to be able to disrupt their rhythm so they miss the shot. I was like, I'll give it a shot. And I promise you, within 3 games of me taking that punt, I knew in 3 games I'd been playing out of position for 18 years. Yeah,
the basketball sense of it is really interesting because my dad actually played college basketball. So I would always apply like some of his, and he was a 5'8" guard. Not a lot you can do when you're 5'8" in basketball, but the off the ball stuff and just the movement, and that was stuff I always tried to apply to when I played, which I thought was interesting that you could take those philosophies from that sport and apply them and they still work. So I thought it was really,
you know, mentality is transferable, you know, mentality is, and so are certain skill sets. And I think, you know, and again, size and being smart and being creative is the other side of that ball. You know, like I always tell all the small kids that think they can't make it that I've played against the smallest guy in the field every time, and he's the best goal scorer that's ever lived. You know what I mean? Like you can't blame size on the game. You just got to use your brain to find out where your advantages live. You know what I mean? And I tell small guys, you know, you're closer to the ground. Your ability to turn is better than mine because it takes me longer. I'm longer than you. You know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, I think finding your own personal gifts and what you bring to the field is the key. And I knew very early on at 19, 20, when I started to play defense at college, this was a gift of mine, just this tenacity to want to defend, to want to disrupt these reputations, wanting to disrupt these rhythms of these players. Again, I didn't take it personally. That's why I wasn't a mean defender. I was just a competitive defender. Yeah. And there's a very big difference. And I think that was one of the things that my old coach, A.D. Boothroyd, used to say. He said, Jay has aggression without anger. And within that was my gift. I could compete with the best players in the world. Athletically, I could run with them and play with them, but I wanted to compete. And that's it. I wasn't a dirty player. I always say my most proud thing that most people don't know is I never in my whole career got suspended for yellow cards. And as an aggressive, competitive defender, I never got more than 5 yellow cards in a whole season ever. And so that's impressive. And I was a hard charging, tackling, competitive person. And so for me, that art of getting that line right, for me was the art of defending. It was that art of mentality and disruption. And so for me, as I got into that role and as I became a professional in that role, I really looked at it really creatively and said, okay, well, what player am I playing against this week? Is he a tall guy? Is he a little guy? Has he got good feet? Is he good in the air? I did a lot of my research as a defender to say, okay, well, where are his holes? Where can I disrupt him? Where can I, do I want to, he doesn't have a good first touch. So let's make sure that I'm staying really close to him. So he backs up into me and they play to his feet. Like as a defender, like it's like a hunter mentality. It's like, if I'm looking for animals to hunt, like I'm going to know where they live. I'm going to know what they do. I'm going to know their tendencies, and then I'm going to figure out how I can exploit them. And then I do my job. And so that's kind of was my process of how I kind of like take the mentality, but then use it as a subjective time every game I played.
That is an interesting point, because it was actually on your sports reference page, and I was looking at the deep analytics, and your foul numbers per season are incredibly low compared to other people. Like your highest was 37 fouls in the season. And that was the year before you went to the Premier League. And I was like, wow, that's very low, which I was actually going to ask you about, like what your version of the art of defending is, but that's really what you said is incredibly smart. Like when you seem like a much smarter player than some people are. Did you ever think about coaching or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I run youth programs now for teens. My goal is to build out this program and make sure I understand the whole youth culture first, because then you can plug that into a club as a coach, I'm working on that right now. Hopefully in the next couple of years, I'll finish the rest of my badges. And, I never know, I'm a guy that likes a lot of things. And again, to your point, how I created this mentality was also from the creative side. And, a lot of people don't know I have a degree in industrial design. So I was trained in the arts and being creative, that's and being a creative defender served me so well. When you're creative, you look at things and you wonder why they happened, and then you get feedback based on what happened, and then you readjust. That's just a creative process. You know what I mean? And so I applied that to my game every day as a designer. Mm-hmm. I designed the game I played. I designed the player that I wanted to fit into. And then I designed the player, my tactics, my tactical approach to the player that I was playing against. And all of that was built on a creative mindset and a design process. And I think I attribute a lot of the way that I think and the way that I was able to play and kind of really transfer that onto the field to the way that I learned how to think creatively.
Do you think younger guys coming through have that creative mentality that you do? Because I don't remember who it was, but it was someone talking about Phil Foden, how youth players who come through today are just uncreative and they just go through the motions and they just do whatever youth system do. Do you think that there are any people coming through nowadays that have not necessarily yours, but their own sense of creativity where they look at the game a little bit differently?
I mean, to your point, I don't think enough. I don't think we put enough, ability or attention to that space. Mm-hmm. How do you get creative? How do you learn how to lead yourself? How do you, again, to your point, kids are coming off the line in a system, right? So Borussia Dortmund has a system. Bayern Munich has a system. Everton has a system. Manchester City has a system. And so within those systems, each player is built within the 11 parts of that system, right? And so it does go stem to the foundation of the club for what the player get to have in their experience. And so within that, again, we played more of a long ball because we had good guys in the air in most of our Watford teams. And so, we played more of a long ball to the point man, the number 9 at the front. And so again, I as a defender, I had to adjust my game to the way we played as a system. And so I think, players, I think it's not their fault they just are part of systems, and those systems, the specific way that they want to play. And so I think, again, it's just the way of the game now. It's just the way that the game is. There's more of it's not a free flowing system anymore. It's a very direct and specific system that's built on a manager and the way that he wants to play or she wants to play. And at the end of the day, players have to fit into systems in order to keep contracts and do their things. But that being said, to your point, are we putting enough mentality on the creativity side of the game? I don't think so. Are we creating enough feedback loops or, criticisms for players to themselves? Are we questioning the way that we were? Are we asking more questions of our performances? Game tape and scouts and all the way they help us do that. They help us become more critical about how we receive feedback, but I don't think that there's enough of it, to be honest. I don't think there's enough players that are trying to be more creative with the game, because again, there's so many ways. There's so many ways to be creative, and I do think, raising light on that subject is important.
Well, maybe that'll go viral, and people, maybe I'll post it on something, and people will see that.
Never know.
And so I've been wanting to ask you this really badly. And so you played in a very exciting time in the Premier League when it got a lot of people hooked. And I know I had coaches that were in their late 20s, early 30s and stuff. And they talked about your generation of that played in the Premier League and the championship and how interesting it was. Who for you was the hardest person that you defended against?
Didier Drogba from Chelsea. Mm-hmm. He was a monster. It's funny because, again, I talk about the art of defending is like finding your holes, and I couldn't find any holes on him. Right. I pushed up against him. He was like pushing up against a wall. I try to jump him, and he's 6'2", so he's like an inch taller than me. And so then I'm trying to fight with him, but he can jump as high as I can. He's faster than me, so I can't try to close him down. And so he was one of the guys where 93 minutes, I was just looking for answers the whole time, and I never found one. And so we ended up playing at Chelsea in the FA Cup, like back-to-back years too. So I ended up playing against him like 4 times in 2 years. And he was like, he scored like 6 goals over 4 games. And it was just like, this guy was a monster. So I would say him. I would say and I think he was Premier League Player of the Year that year too, like around 2006, 2007. Yep. And he was just, I couldn't find him. I couldn't beat him. And so I'd say him.
He had an impressively long career too, because he was playing in Phoenix just a few years ago.
Yeah, he finished with Phoenix Rising. And, again, like these types of players are, we forget how many great players there are out there. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm just fortunate enough to be able to tell stories about them.
Well, I'm fortunate enough to have someone here who can tell me stories about them. So going back to when you guys got promoted, did you have, which I know you touched on it in your documentary, but really and truly, what was that moment like when you thought, oh crap, I have to defend against these people on a regular basis? I mean, there are so many talented people in the league. I mean, young Ronaldo, all these different people. What was that moment like when you thought, I got to go against these people 2 times a year?
Well, that was it. That you picked the right team with that Man United crew, because we had them, I think, at Vicarage Road, which is our Watford home stadium, I think in the second or third game of that season. And so the first time it hits you is when the fixtures come out. We get promoted, we have a little celebration, we're in the Premier League, but we've never seen the Premier League. I'd never played in Manchester United Stadium. And so you don't really realize it. And then all of a sudden, middle of July, all of a sudden the fixtures come out and you're like, whoa, Manchester United is going to be Vicarage Road and you're, week 3, and that's when it really starts to hit you. And then the media starts to call, and then, the media never stops. And because it's the most sought after league in the world. And from a media perspective too, and a TV deal and all the rights and all the other things. And so that's when it really starts to hit you. And then, for me, it was the tunnel moment of like Vicarage Road, Manchester United. You walk out and you see their red jerseys in the tunnel, and you see like Van der Sar in goal, Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, Wayne Rooney, young Ronaldo, Rio Ferdinand. Like, these guys are the best players in the world. And I remember standing in that tunnel looking up to the right and going, oh my God, like, I got to go hit that good looking guy. He is as good looking as they say he is too, by the way, that Ronaldo guy. Oh yeah. But and again, I always took pride in that. And I always just, it's like, I could sit there and look across from me and go, oh my God, Ronaldo's going to crush me. Oh my God, look at that badge. That's Manchester United I get to play against. They're going to crush me. Again, it's so easy to go there because that's where the rest of the world thinks. You the Manchester United, they're going to crush you and whatever. But like, I always enjoyed that kind of pushing up against the social norms of what people expect. Again, that's just something that's burned inside of me. it's not a prove people wrong idea. It's not a chip on my shoulder. It's more of a prove myself right. I deserve to be here kind of moment.
Yeah.
And how I get there, again, it took a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of creativity. But once you're there, like, now you're going to be scared. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, I get to be the person now. I'm in the tunnel. I'm sitting there next to trying to kick Ryan Giggs. Now go kick him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to sit here and think that now they're going to beat me. You know what I mean? I'm on the same field as these guys. And so that was always my mentality in those tunnels. It was really easy to look at the superstars, those big badges, and go, they're going to crush me. What if I make a mistake? All these people are watching, all these kind of pressure ideas that can bring you down. I always switched it to, like, I get to go kick Ryan Giggs. I get to be the guy that walks out in the stadium. So go enjoy it and go kick him. Make the most of it, and don't be scared of it, because you deserve to be here. And again, because I always say this, like, kids should never be scared to play because somebody else picked you. You don't pick yourself. A coach picks you. So if you've been chosen to play. You know what I mean? No more pressure, no more things. Somebody else told you that you're good enough to be one of these 11. So go out there and be one, and go out there and make the most of that moment and most of those opportunities. And I think that never changed for me, whether I was in a, red shirt freshman college game trying to figure out defending or walking out against Manchester United. The mentality was the same.
So you stood in a tunnel with all these fantastic people, but just a few years before that, you were playing non-league. You were from Wisconsin, which I'm from a small town, North Carolina. I know what it feels like to be just like not. I know what you're talking about. But did you what made you realize that you deserved to be there? That you were taking someone's spot? Like, what gave you that mentality to realize that you deserve to be there?
I think it's a confidence thing. Confidence is built from awareness. Mm-hmm. Awareness is built from intention. So my intention was to go to England and be a soccer player. That was my intention. So now I'm living my intention. But if I'm not aware, again, then I was like, okay, these are my qualities as a defender. This is what gets me picked. Now I go out there and show those gifts to the world. And then now I get confidence because all those pieces are finally fitting. But if I wasn't aware of what the type of player I was, if I wasn't aware of what I brought to that field because I didn't know why I was there with my intention, then that can't unlock the confidence that's desired. And so I say start with intention, then move to awareness. Awareness unlocks confidence. Confidence unlocks belief. Mm-hmm. And once you believe, then you can do anything.
So many good moments from this already that are going to hopefully help young kids. But so thank you for saying all these great things. And I promise you, I will not spend the whole time on Messi and Ronaldo. But when you played against Ronaldo, did you know that he would turn out to be the player that he is today? 5 Ballon d'Ors, 5 Champions Leagues. Did you know that he was going to be that guy? You
can see it. You can feel it with him. I got to play against him when he was 19. So he was. I played in the Confederations Cup in Venezuela in 2009, or was it 2007? I can't remember. But he was just a young buck coming through. We played Argentina in our first game, and he just has an aura about him. Again, he's the most unassuming little guy you'll ever meet. Like he's to your shoulder, and you think, how can this guy be the best player in the world? But then you watch his rise and you watch his humility. I watch the way he carries himself. Guys try to kick him. It's incessant. I can't even imagine what it would like to be him, to just be kicked all day long. And guys are trying to disrupt him and kick him and disrupt him and kick him. He just gets right up and he does it again. He gets right up. And that's the beauty of what he's been able to do. And him and Ronaldo for the last 10 years have been doing it as the best players in the world. You know how hard it is to be the best in the world once? Yeah. These guys have been doing it for a decade. And so, I just feel like I'm so fortunate to be able to be on those fields with those guys, because they teach you a mentality too. Mm-hmm. When you're in at a world-class level, technically you're one of the best players in the world. But even at that point, you can look at a Messi and Ronaldo and say those guys are a world above everybody else. And so for us as players, that was inspiring. For us as players that want to be like that, they become our role models, even though we're still in the same field. And so I think those are the things I took away from playing against those big players, is like, you walk out the field. One is like, if you did a good job, that's a good confidence booster for you to go, you've brushed shoulders with the best players in the world and you came out all right. gain confidence in that, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of where I lived. I went, and then all while still trying to aspire to learn from them and to understand how they can create that consistency. How can they do this for so long, for so well? And I think, you know, that was always the, you know, the takeaways I had from the reflection of those was like that those guys made me better too.
Yeah. And one thing I love about both of them, which I'm not going to pick a favorite, but one thing I love about both of them is that you talked about how they've done it. They've been the best players for so long, but they also have got the most scrutiny out of it, probably any players. I mean, you go on like a random social media comment, it'll be Ronaldo's better, Messi's better. It's just constantly, they being scrutinized over everything. The fact that they have both carried themselves and done the things that they have with the amount of pressure they've had on for 10, 15 years now, and what they've done is insane. So
100%, you know, and then that's, you know, they're great role models for the sport, you know, and again, like guys like Mbappe and Neymar, like they're trying to get in there. They're trying their best to be the world's best player, and they can't because these guys just won't let them in because they're relentless. And that's the beauty of it. Like these guys are just, you know, they're icons. They're icons for all of us. And again, that we should always look to them with full respect, whether one is better than the other. Again, that's just a subjective conversation. Yeah. Again, you're talking about two of the greatest players, if not the greatest players that have ever walked on the field.
Well, and anything they do, it's brought up. I remember I was in 6th grade and I didn't know much about soccer, and I loved Messi when I was a kid. And my friend Eduardo, he was like, you know, Messi goes out drinking all the time and stuff. He's like, you shouldn't be your idol and stuff. It's just like anything that they do, they get scrutinized. He's like, well, Ronaldo doesn't drink. He takes perfect care of himself. Like he's much better and stuff. And like, it's just anything they do, it's always in the news. Did you ever feel like that in your career, that anything you did, it would like, did you have to like, trying to choose my words here, but like be complacent with the things that you did?
Yeah. I mean, again, I believe we're all subjective. You know, we all have choices. And, you know, again, I was a social person. I went to university, man. I was a bartender. I loved going out. I got to be honest, you know, but that was me. You know, again, you have to start at the front. It's like, how do you perform? If you can perform and you can go out on a Saturday after the game and take your Sunday off and get back to training Monday after being out with the crew and having a good time socially, what's wrong with that? Yeah. You know, again, as long as you don't mess up priority A, is that performance, then do what you want. And again, again, both guys have gotten there by being them, I think, you know, and again, that's where it starts with this whole self-understanding piece is like, do what you like, do what makes you who you are and be that. And I think that goes, you know, again, those guys are great examples of that.
So I want to go back to your Watford time, because I want to talk about when you were relegated. What was that moment like for you to be on the biggest stage and the ending? What were the emotions for you when it all kind of came to an end in the Premier League?
I mean, it's a bit of a soul crusher because you know that, you know, the lights are off. You know what I mean? Yeah. When you're in the Premier League ship, the lights are on because everything matters. Every second you kick is a big deal, and it's all captured, you know, on the TV. And you know, to lose that is always a little bit of a gut punch. But for me, the blessing in that was that I got offered the captaincy to stay, and so I didn't, you know, as a leader, someone that, you know, we came down at my Premier League season was probably my best season, you know, as an individual. And I think that really served me to move into a leadership role for the club later. And so as we came down from the championship, I got offered the captaincy. And for me, I think that was bigger than staying in a league, you know, just for the lights. I thought, you know, for me to be an American that was offered a captaincy of an English club, that's a big honor. That's a legacy piece, I think, that I didn't take for granted. And I just loved that. I loved being able to be in those rooms and, you know, being a leader again, which I learned how to be, you know, was a gift. And so I took that and instead, you know, to be, you know, loyalty is as you can see, is very rare in sports.
Very. I was just about to say that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, and people chase contracts and they chase money, and you go, for me, money was never supposed to be there in the first place because I was never supposed to be there in the first place, and so money was never my driver. It was experience. It was about legacy, and it was about making sure I got the most out of what I thought I could give to the game. And when you get offered those types of leadership roles, again, to be a captain of an English club, you know, I was like, I gotta stay here. This is special. This is something that I deserve. This is something that I've earned. through the 3 years that I played to earn my stripes into that club and to get the respect from the manager and the club and then to be honored in that way. I was like, I got to stay. And so then I stayed for another 3 seasons, captained the club, over 100 times. And again, that for me was, I look back on it now and it was such the right move. I had opportunities to move and, go sideways, get on a Premier League bench and fight my way up again. Like I was like, I've already done that.
Yeah.
I have a chance to be a leader of the team. So I'm going to choose that. And so that's why I stayed at Watford. And, I don't regret that decision for a second.
Not a lot of people like that anymore. So, I mean, I'm sure that the fans were so appreciative of you. And what was it like for him?
It's a club issue too. The clubs aren't rewarding players. They're not rewarding players to stay. Same thing happened for me with the Whitecaps. I tried to stay and they almost offered me less. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? That's not how this works. You don't bring in the new star and try to give him more money than the players that have built the roots of the club. It doesn't work that way. But unfortunately, half the time it's the club. Yeah. Half the time it's the club saying, oh, well, let's not, let's see if he'll stay because I know he wants to stay and we'll offer him less and things like that. And that happens a lot in the MLS. And again, I'm just an example of that. I know a bunch of people in the left that's happened to. And it's disappointing because again, to your point, I believe that it's a relationship between the player and the club. And unfortunately, either the player leaves or the club doesn't respect them enough to keep them. And I think that's why.
Well, I mean, I fell in love with that Atlanta team in 2017, 18, 19. I mean, my dad doesn't even like soccer that much, but we just fell in love with those teams and we would go to games and stuff. And then after they won the MLS Cup, it just seemed like everyone left. They got rid of everyone. They didn't really care about their culture or anything like that. And that's why it's hard to watch them sometimes because I'm like, Miggy should be here. Hector Villalba should be here. Like all these people should be here. But it didn't, I don't know if they chose to leave. Like some of them didn't. Like I know Miggy went to Newcastle and stuff like that. But some of them, it just felt like it was just disrespect and it was tough for some of those people to leave. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, but again, it's also the nature of the game, what I mean? And the game evolves in a way that sometimes the players or the clubs can't control, that people are just doing what they think they have to do. And to be with the ebbs and the flows of the game. And so I think that's common, but to your point, I think we should give more legacy points to people. And I think we should honor more of a legacy. And, that's why I grew up in Green Bay. So seeing Aaron Rodgers, instead of taking big money to go be a quarterback for some other team he doesn't care about for 2 more years to pick up another 10 mil, you know what I mean? Stay at the club, create your legacy forever. And again, I'm a big believer in that. And just so you know, I got 10 minutes and I gotta call at noon. So just like.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for warming. Cause I want to get to your USA time. Cause I mean, crazy. I mean, I was young during the 2010 World Cup, but I went back and did a lot of research on it. And you played with some fantastic people. You played against some fantastic people. I mean, you played with one of my absolute idols, Clint Dempsey, which I know you played with Landon Donovan. For some reason, when I was a kid, I hated Landon Donovan. I don't know why. For some reason, in my head, I created even though I don't think this ever happened to anyone else, but I created a battle between the two. And I don't know why I thought they were rivals, even though they were teammates, but I hated Landon Donovan when I was a kid because I just loved Clint Dempsey so much. I actually got to meet him in Orlando.
Real, hold on. I got something for you. Hold on. Just a sec. You said. Funny, I had these out the other day, but I got a couple fun jerseys. I got the Dempsey. I got the Dempsey Seattle. I got the Hernan Crespo from Argentina. I don't know if you remember him.
Oh, yeah.
And then the money shot, Pure Love.
Oh, wow. What a legendary player right there.
There's a couple legends there. But, I think, Clint for me is the greatest U.S. player. I think for him to come to England, become a leader over there through a couple different ways. And, again, he just did it unassuming. Landon was someone that was built through the program that really got a lot of the fame and the attention, which was deserved. Again, taking no credit away from Landon Donovan, one of the greatest players of all time, of course. And again, I was fortunate enough to play with 2 of the greatest American icons we've had. And I think both of those guys brought a different character to the locker room. Clint was more of a renegade spirit, someone that played with a chip on his shoulder and proved it at every level. Landon was someone that always carried that pressure. He always carried that limelight. And I think, he dealt with it the best that he could, you know what I mean? And I think he dealt with it incredibly well. And I think, again, both those guys deserve the respect that they have. And, I come from the renegade side though. So I'm a Clint fan myself. And so that's why.
Thank you for backing that up, because that just settled about a 10-year debate in my head between the two. Because, oh man, $20 for the jersey, take it or leave it. But I actually met Clint Dempsey in Orlando. He came to play Orlando. I was in Orlando. It was my first game I ever went to see, and I absolutely harassed him. I mean, obviously he was going to come to me. I was just waiting. I was the away team, because he was back when he was playing for he was the away team when he was playing with Seattle, and I was just going crazy. I was like, Clint, Mr. Dempsey. I was just screaming at him. And finally he was like, hold on, I will get to you. And I was like, okay, sorry. And he finally came over, but absolute idol of mine. But your time in the World Cup was, what did you think when you got chosen for the World Cup? What, honestly, how far did you think that team would go? Because that was one of the most talented USA teams, and it's a World Cup year. Doesn't feel like it at all, but it's a World Cup year. And so how far did you think that team would go, and how far do you think that the team this year will go in this World Cup?
I mean, that's a good question. And I think, our 2009 team, which we beat Spain, snapped their win streak in South Africa in the Confederations Cup, really set us up for a good World Cup, I think. Again, we had a good group of players, really, really diverse group, all different personalities, different characters, which I think is important to a group. I think there's good character in this new group that's coming through. I think, again, and I think one of the big commonalities, and this is what I'll say about why I like it, is because when you look at that 2009-2010 team, we were all leaders for our clubs too. We weren't just like guys that played in Europe. Like Tim was the captain of Everton. I was the captain of Watford. Steve Cherundolo, captain of Hanover. Carlos Bocanegra, captain of Fulham. We had leaders that came into our collective group of the US, and we were all leaders. Yeah. And so I think that was one thing that really from that 2009-2010 group that we had. And I look at this group now and I see the same thing, like Tyler Adams now signing for Leeds in the Premier League, Aronson, same. You got, Pulisic winning Champions League titles. You got Weston McKennie being a contributor, lifting trophies at Juventus. These guys are leaders in their teams too. And that's the greatest transfer you can have to create success on your national team. So that's what I think I see a lot of the parallels in. And that's exciting because, again, World Cups only come along every 4 years. So you got to get it right.
Yeah. And glad you mentioned Tim. Love Tim Howard, by the way. I don't know if it's true, but I read that he has Tourette's. I also have Tourette's, so I've been a huge fan of him. Oh, no way. He was huge. Yeah, when I found out about that, I actually sent him a message on Instagram like 2 years ago. I was like, hey, how do you handle this stuff? He didn't message me back. I will hold that against him forever. But huge fan of him. And just going back and researching him, the fact that he played with these amazing teams and was a leader for those teams is huge. And the fact you brought that up, that the leadership is insane. I love that these Americans are leading on the teams that they're on, and that they're so great. And one interesting thing I thought about when I went back and watched a lot of your highlights was almost every single time you did something, it was Jay DeMerit, the American. But nowadays, you don't really hear that as much. You just hear their name. It's like, it's a part of it. And I've loved the way that it's grown, and that Americans are just a part of it. It's not a huge deal. Like, it's something that's supposed to be. Well,
and again, I think it's a deserved thing. And I think, some of us that went over there on our own a long time ago, we have to pave the way from something. And I think all of us that were able to do that are proud of that. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of, giving young Americans an inspiration to go and try it in the big leagues overseas, and I mean, again, it's the greatest opportunity they'll ever have. And again, until and you'll get there someday, you'll go to Europe and see what it's like. And again, that's taking no disservice away from what we've created now in North American soccer. But, when you go there and you play in those leagues, you feel it, you're part of it, you want to be a part of it. And it's just addictive, like you feel this hum of the stadium, you understand the culture of the game because they teach you that. And I think, American players that have been over there have been able to do that and have been able to kind of, again, adopt their game to suit European games. It's a credit to the players, but it's also like, it's what they should be doing. It's the highest level. the highest of the high. And you want that as a player. You want to compete with the best players in the world. That's the point. And so I think, being able to do that, and then now, watching these young Americans going over there and having success, even managers now with Jesse Marsh and like having him go up. I know how hard it is to survive in the Premier League, and for him to do what he did at Leeds with the pressure from a really pressure place like Leeds. Again, that's a major credit to Jesse Marsh and what he's been able to build there. And you can give all the Ted Lasso crap you want, but at the end of the day, that guy did his job, which 99% of managers can't do. And he's American for that. Wisconsin boy as well. I give credit to Wisconsin. But again, this is the wave of American soccer. And again, we're 100 years behind, like you said earlier. Like when I walked Watford out, I had a patch that said 1881. When I walked out the Whitecaps, it said 1974. So you look at that, and we're almost 100 years behind. And so we need to take that into account. We need to be accountable for that. But to see this wave of new players and new managers and things, it's exciting. It's exciting for the game.
Yeah. So I know you have to leave soon, but real quick, I just want to hear about what you've been doing after retirement, because I looked into Rise and Shine and stuff. Signed up for the beta, by the way. It seemed really interesting. I just want to hear about what you have going on after retirement, what you're brewing up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, for me, Rise and Shine became a thing. Rise and Shine is a program now. We have, because of the success of the movie, we've created youth programs. We have a charity. We have a music festival, which is our big fundraiser. And then now we're building an app with EA that's going to gamify empowerment for young people. It's like a masterclass in TikTok based on celebrities and brands and cool things. It's gamifying learning. And, for me, that's where my passion lives, sharing my experiences and being a part of something, but now giving it to the next generation, sharing our experiences and mentorship levels that can help young people like yourself understand us, so then you can help understand yourself. And that's what mentorship is. It's not me telling you to be like me. It's me telling you that this is what I did, so take it and apply it to your life so you don't have to make the mistakes that I did. Like that's mentorship. It's not be like me, because that's ego. And so I try to live in that mentorship level now. We got programs all across the country. I run them in 5 cities. I have my summer program now. We do DJ camps. We do leadership programs that have nothing to do with soccer. And then we have soccer camps too. So, I'm big into the holistic leadership level for teenagers. That's where we live. And Rise and Shine again. So kind of stay tuned on that. Hopefully by fall, we're going to be launching the app with EA, the big video game company. So we get some pretty big hitters, coming to the table with us. But, for me, it's about giving kids back their own journeys. And so if we can gamify learning and make it fun and make it interesting, and then again, eventually, give your story back to the user, which is you. It's your story. What's your Rise and Shine story? You don't know yet, but you have one. I know it. You just haven't figured it out yet. And so if we can give you tools as a young person to help you understand that quicker or better, then that's my job. And so I use my experience to build that. I bring in amazing friends off the ball, like CEOs and chefs and firemen and all these amazing people I've been so fortunate to be friends with over the years. And then we as a collective start to educate the next generation, because you start telling the soccer kids all they can do is play soccer and you're going to be a soccer player. What happens at 18 when they, soccer's not a part of their life as much anymore? I don't believe the development system should be, singular. I believe development systems should be holistic, and people should do a lot of things in their development. And so now I'm creating that and look forward to continue to spread the Rise and Shine message.
Well, that's great. I mean, I myself went through that. I thought my whole life I was going to play pro, and now I'm just trying to figure out what I love and what I got to do. So, thank you again for coming on, and I really can't wait to see where Rise and Shine goes. I want to thank you again for coming on. Disclaimer, I was very nervous, very starstruck, but I think it went well, and thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, buddy, I'm telling you what, Caleb, first things first, you sent the email. So good job on you. And I'm happy to be on part of these podcasts. And again, thanks for spreading the love of the game. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
And keep rising and shining in whatever you do.
Thank you. You have a good day.
Thanks, Beck. See ya.
See ya.